as Voices has been doing for 30 years now, and who, together with your support, has helped turn stories of pain into stories of success. Please, I ask that you give your full attention now and listen with your hearts as a brave individual tells you his story. Every year I am amazed by these stories. I'm astounded by the quiet suffering of a young child and the light that shines through any way given the right set of circumstances. Tonight will be no different, so I ask all of you to please take a moment and give this gentleman, Mr. Mike Dunleavy, your full attention. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mike Dunleavy, and it's a terrific honor to be here with you this evening to share my story. I was lucky. I'm not supposed to be here with you this evening to share my story, but the work of Voices and other child advocacy groups helped me get here. I'm hoping that the words that I speak tonight might motivate you further such that my story becomes the norm and not the exception. My little brother and I spent 10 years in the Florida foster care system, aging out at 18. My mother left our dad before grade school, taking us with her on quite a ride, eventually losing us physically, legally, and emotionally. We saw her to be loving, charming, and adventurous, but watched her lose her strength and passion for life due to drug abuse. She would disappear in the middle of the night, and sometimes she'd go missing for days. Every day of my childhood was filled with the renewed hope that she would clean up her act and we'd be a family again. On the night that we were taken into custody, I remember riding in the back of the police car with my brother thinking that our lives would never be the same. When we got to the police station, we were fingerprinted and photographed. And we thought, isn't this how criminals are treated? Why are we being treated as if we did something wrong? We were taken to an emergency shelter in the early hours of the morning. We were told 6 months max. 6 months. Those 6 months turned out to be 10 years. In hindsight, I guess they meant 6 months at that placement. But in that moment, as an 8-year-old child, we learned that plans and promises would continue to be broken for years to come. The court allowed visitation at the beginning. At the convenience of the caseworker, we'd wait outside the courtroom to spend an hour with her or so after the court hearing was finished. She'd usually come out crying, and we didn't understand why. We were always confused about court, but found it far beyond our control. We were just so happy to be spending time with her. All we wanted to do was hear her voice and see her smile, touch her, and tell us that everything was going to be okay. We needed her strength, but she couldn't give that to us. Our hopes of reunification dwindled. She started missing visitation dates, stopped meeting her case plan goals, and kept using drugs. We'd get letters from her from time to time, and we knew when she was in jail because we'd get the letters more frequently and her messages were clear. These were the times that our hopes were the highest, that she was on her way back to becoming the mother that we once adored and trusted. By age 11, I accepted that hope would not be realized and that my brother and me would be left to figure out much on our own. We moved around a lot, as most foster kids do, and not only in Florida, but from Florida to California, back to Florida, to Illinois, and then back to Florida. These movements, these changes in placement, and the transitions that followed were this three-headed monster that not only set off a cycle of emotions about the current change, but also resurrected emotions from each prior shake to our stability. From being kicked out and feeling rejected, to the nerves of being in a new, unfamiliar environment, to finally gaining acceptance, just to start all over again each time we were moved. And the concern, specifically the concern about our belongings and whether or not they would fit into a trash bag the caseworker brought, or whether you'd lose all of them because the caseworker forgot to bring a trash bag, or maybe you were removed from school in the middle of the day. In the 5th grade, a note was sent to my class, which the teacher read out loud. Empty your locker and report to the main office. I thought I was in serious trouble. But then it clicked, and I suspected that I was probably heading back to foster care. Sure enough, a man in a suit and a tie was waiting for me, thinking, would I run? I couldn't. I wasn't sure about my brother. My brother was my mini-me. He did everything I did. He He wanted everything I had. Same size, same color, it didn't matter. I knew very early on that if I were to amount to a criminal, he would too. That reality made me think twice about every decision that I've made. I'm only 18 months older, but that is an age gap that mattered during our earlier years. After a while, I embraced this responsibility and found the potential I possessed to make a better way for us both. Setting an example, the right example, for my brother became a driving force in my life. He was my anchor. He had faith in me to lead the way, no matter our course. He believed in me, so I started to believe in myself. I sought out big brothers myself on the streets, at school, or wherever I could. I started asking a lot of questions about our case. Why? What comes next? How come? There was no end to my questions. And while I had a growing suspicion that education could provide a better path for us both, once I learned that foster children could attend a state university tuition-free, I set my sights on college. When I aged out back in 2000, there was no independent living program or extended foster care with financial support from the state. The tuition waiver was really a goodbye and a hope not to hear about you being incarcerated sometime soon. In one particular home that we lived, my foster mother suggested that I attend a magnet school. It's quite a turning point in my story, actually. I applied and accepted, but we had another placement move, and I figured I was saying goodbye to a better education. We arrived at the boys' home when I was 11, about 50 other boys. It's an orphanage, if you will, where we learned discipline, integrity, respect, and a strong work ethic. No one from the boys' home had gone on after foster care and graduated from college. It really made me want to attend that magnet school and defy the statistics. I was able to convince the boys' home staff that I could handle making breakfast, getting ready, and finish all my chores in time to walk to the school bus. And so it was that I started my mornings at 5 a.m. while the other boys slept. I graduated from high school, aged out of foster care, and I wanted as far away from foster care as possible. I got a job, and I was excited to be earning money. And although college was something I had looked forward to for a long time, the more I thought about it, the more I thought I had to be earning money to support my brother when he aged out. But education kept creeping back into my mind. I remember when I was at the boys' home, there was talk of this agreement with a neighboring private university that was willing to provide a full scholarship to any of the boys there who finished high school or otherwise qualified to attend school there. This agreement was made back in the 40s or 50s, and there was no written proof. So as far as we were concerned, this was myth. I had nothing to lose, so I figured I'd go over to the admissions office and ask the president directly. He said he'd love to have me. In 2004, I became the first boy from the boys' home to graduate college. My brother was the second. After college, I benefited from a few fortunate relationships that ultimately pushed me back towards foster care. I really liked helping other foster kids. It fulfilled me in the most amazing of ways and allowed me to be part of something so much bigger than myself, bigger than my will to help my brother, bigger than foster care itself. I started to carve a path in child advocacy. From working with small groups of youth through the Florida Youth Shine group, which I was the chairman of, to working in Tallahassee during legislative sessions and testifying before both houses, meeting with DCF secretary and staff and the governor about child welfare reform. I traveled half of the counties around Florida conducting trainings with the judges and members of the judiciary, including attorneys working for DCF. Through all that, I learned that developing legislation requires intense reading and legal understanding, so I decided to go to law school. It feels as though my whole life has been about putting myself in a position to help others. And in that process, of course, I bettered myself. I never dreamt of college or law school so that I could become successful, but rather that by bettering myself, I could help my brother and the other kids in the boys' home who I grew to love and consider to be family. It's hard to keep focus in foster care. The stigma associated with being a foster child is just one of the many unintended consequences that impact a child's ultimate outcome. Those assumptions made about a foster kid are incredibly damaging. Those stigmas reinforce a negative outcome because when you're a kid and no one believes in you, how do you believe in yourself? The most damaging part about those assumptions is that they make it into your case file. And your case file as a foster child is your identity to the outside world. Each adult you come into contact with, of the many among your constellation of caretakers and the myriad of decision makers who's in your life because it's their job, reads those reports as truth. Before you have time to figure out who you are, before you can show others what you're capable of being, who you are has been created and cemented by assumptions made and written in a report that somehow became fact. It's been 14 years since I aged out of the foster care. And I worked in DC for the US Department of Health and Human Services. I've assisted our kids right here in Miami-Dade with the design and implementation of new rules for the Florida foster care system. I've received several awards, none of which I felt I deserved, but made me feel as if I could accomplish so much more. For the last year, I've had the honor to work for the mayor of Miami-Dade County, the Honorable Carlos A. Jimenez. He's here this evening. I'm not sure where he's sitting. Sir, I saw you earlier, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank you for a few things, but working under your administration has been an extreme honor. It's made me more tough, more fiscally responsible, and has taught me and given me the confidence to do the next right thing, even though when it may not be the politically right thing to do. And I thank you for your example. This has been an exhilarating journey and humbling experience for me, and my proudest moments, my greatest achievements have been watching my brother graduate from college and encouraging 5 other young people from the boys' home to get involved in the legislative process and make sure that foster children have representation in the political process so that we might make inroads to improve our system of care. I'm standing here tonight as a testament of the power and the impact that your support, organizations like Voices for Children, can have in a foster youth's life. I'm standing here tonight sharing that this little 8-year-old boy from an orphanage is now a 32-year-old man who just weeks ago was sworn in as a Florida attorney. But the real success that I have achieved is the fact that finally, I've let go of the fear that defined my childhood. I have a sense of security, and I know that I'm going to be okay. And I know that I will continue to reach new heights, and with each achievement, I'll have an amazing opportunity to help other people and give back to our community. I sincerely hope that you will join me in creating the resources for young people who grew up in the wrong area, with the wrong parents, but who are waiting for someone to help pick up the pieces and explain what's next. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard Mike, and you heard that for a lot of people in the system, it's just a job. Well, for us at Voices and at the Guardian ad Litem, it's not a job, it's a way of life. You heard how important it was for Mike to lead the way for his brother. Well, we have a surprise for Mike tonight.
Where is he here? Oh my God.
And his nephew. Thank you. Thanks, brother. Whew. I don't know if I can get over that. You guys can take a seat. My name is Nelson Incapié, and I'm the president and CEO of Voices for Children. I have the great honor to see stories like Mike and so many others, which I'll tell you about in a second. But we couldn't do anything, any of what we do, without you, without your support, without your financial support. We put the heart, you put the money. And that's how it is, unfortunately, or fortunately for us. because you're some of the most generous members of this community. And for that, I can't thank you enough from the bottom of my heart.